On Talking Lifestyle, The Daily Drive, brought to you by the 50 Up Club.
Great to be here on this Monday night. Nick Bennett and Sam Stove with you. Trevor Long joins us in an hour's time for Talking Technology, 13 12 83. If you have any questions for Trev, as we welcome to the studio, as we do every Monday, Charles Tarbey, Property Fast Track from Century 21. How are you?
Yes, good evening, Nick. Good evening, Sam.
G'day, Charles. How's everything going in the property world?
Who was here before me? Because
is that a long blonde hair?
There's a long blonde hair.
Well, it's clearly mine. Wow. My luscious locks are molting all over the studio.
Or Kaylee's.
Well, that's true.
It
might have hung
Kaylee's.
around since the weekend. But I think that it's my voluminous mane that's probably the culprit this afternoon, Charles. So apologies.
Wonderful.
I'll molt elsewhere.
Not a problem.
Now, gents, plenty on tonight. First of all, just reminding you, if you have a question for Charles, he's got heaps of experience in real estate, so get on the blower. 13 12 83, or maybe you prefer email. Head to talkinglifestyle.com.au and click on message. Or that phone again, 13 12 83. We'll take a look at new homes being held up by red tape soon, Charles. I reckon this is a story near and dear to you. I'm sure you've got plenty to share upon it.
I'd probably want to talk more. I've always wanted to talk more about this than anything else because I've always talked about the fact that there's been shortage of properties. We've been talking about it for years, that there was going to be a massive shortage right across Australia. Some councils, local councils, state governments have addressed it. Some have not. And I think we've mentioned this before in the past, Nick. There are some councils even saying in capital cities, in the capital of Sydney, in the city of Sydney, that developers go to land and environment at the same time they go to council with their development application because it's just they just know they're going to have a battle from day one.
Okay.
Yet you've got, of course, everybody talking about affordability. You've got governments talking about how they can improve that, but there are very easy ways.
The Property Council of Australia has released some research about this. The numbers are quite telling, and we're going to speak with the boss of the Property Council, Jane Fitzgerald, quite shortly.
And as we do every week, we'll go around the grounds, around the country, and this particular night we're going to go to a suburb of Sydney in New South Wales called Riverstone. And, of course, the auction wrap with Tom Panos. Now, he knows his stuff.
He does.
In fact, over the weekend, Charles, I went to an auction myself. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this exciting afternoon, the auction of this pristine property that presents beautifully in this sought-after, highly valued cul-de-sac. It really is a unique urban paradise. My name is Vic Caruso, and you've done your due diligence. You know the market because you're all bright as buttons. You've been on the web, you've been checking out realestate.com.au. I know what you get up to. You be the judge of what this palace is worth today. Take a look around. Let it all just come over you right now. See yourself lounging on the deck. All the work's been done. No need to give up your weekends and flog your guts out on the back of a mower. It's a treat to see this unusual, maintenance-free, completely concrete backyard. Absolutely beautiful. Just hose it down. No problem at all. The accommodation is second to none. Plenty of room for the 4 kids and the mother-in-law, although why you'd let her inside, I'll never know. Just joking, ladies. Now, there's no prize for second place at an auction. Sure, you walk away with a glossy flyer, but that'll only play on your mind for years to come as a reminder of what could have been. A nasty, painful reminder. Don't hold back with your bid, sir. I can see the wife right there. She's wearing the pants. Only joking, but she is in charge today. So as you bid, don't skimp and hold back. If you miss out and you didn't go hard with that extra 50k bid, no, sir, it'll be an extremely awkward drive home with the wife. So listen to your wife. She does drive the ship, sir. She's the one that wants the house. All the very best, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day. Let's get this bidding going. Can I have an opening offer of $2 million?
Wow.
There's a bit of fun out there in auction land, isn't it, Charles?
I actually was witness to Vic Caruso at an auction competition in Parramatta some 4 or 5 years ago. He fronted up there. He's got a great personality for it, and certainly a great voice. Everybody knows his voice, and there were people hunting him down for selfies that night.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the auctioneers because they've got a particular way of really connecting with people.
I would like to see more auctions called the way they were just called then, because that's the truth.
They're fun. And he is the guy you talk about is a really good one. He really reads the room beautifully. And it's a real art that some of these guys, and I guess women do it as well. I see mainly blokes auctioning houses.
Mainly, but there's some fantastic female auctioneers that have been acknowledged for their skills over the last few years at various institute functions. So,
what do you think the art of a good auctioneer is? Is it about relatability? Is it about warmth? Because you've got a very, very short period of time to extract the biggest amount of money anybody's ever going to spend on anything.
It's a team effort, definitely is a team effort, but the auctioneer has got to make sure that the agents are also trained to understand how to work with buyers and sellers at that moment, because that's when it's happening. And I've seen some terrible auctions conducted that have been, has anybody got a bid? Nobody got a bid? Well, if you don't want to give me a bid, we'll pass it in. There's no work, there's no extraction, and there were people there that were willing to buy. And I think that is very much an art form, but the agents themselves have got to be on the ball working with the auctioneer.
Right.
13 12 83 tonight. Charles Tarbey's here on Property Fast Track. Maybe you've got some wisdom you can share, Charles, to someone who's confounded by the whole process of auctioning. It can be a little in your face. 13 12 83. Charles can help you out.
I've had some very interesting auctions over the years because that's what I did for quite some time. So working a floor, working a room with a variety of people in a room who are competing against each other, even husbands and wives who are going through a divorce or gone through a divorce, competing for the same property. There are very, very interesting stories out there. I can't use some of the descriptive adjectives that might have been used by some of these people, but wow, we should get some really, really energetic people at auction. Got to watch my words.
Yeah, 13 12 83 is the number. So here's something we've heard a million times before. Governments will talk about the solution to rising house prices and they'll say it comes down to being more supply.
Yep.
But data from the Property Council of Australia shows that a lot of the potential house supply is being held up in red tape, bureaucratic complications. In the past 5 years, there was enough land released to build 805,000 new dwellings in New South Wales, but just 115,000 homes were actually built. Jane Fitzgerald is the New South Wales Executive Director of the Property Council of Australia, and she joins us now. G'day, Jane.
Hi, how are you going tonight?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, Jane. So what's going on? That's a statistic that's a bit concerning, isn't it? So potentially 805,000 new homes could have been built in a state, but only 115,000 came to fruition. What's holding everything up?
Look, it's pretty frightening, isn't it? And I think the reason it's happening, and it's happening quietly to some degree, is that there's several stages, as you guys know, of the property, bringing a property to market. You know, from the time that the land is released, there's a zoning process. Then you have to get the water and the sewerage and all of those things connected. Then you've got to go through a development assessment process, and then finally you might get to completion. What's happening is that at each point of that process, thousands of homes are getting lost or delayed. And as you were saying before, what that means is that we're not getting the supply that we need, where we need it, when we need it, because we know that in Sydney in particular, but certainly, right across New South Wales and in some parts of Australia, what we need is a diversity of stock coming to the market so that, there's different price points for different markets, first home buyers, apartment buyers, land and home package buyers. So I think it's really just one of those things where there's a whole bunch of different problems, and at the end of the day, you end up with the scary statistics that we've released today.
Yep. Hi, Jane. Charles, I know the answer to this question from my personal point of view, from having completed developments and still being involved in developments. But just for the people listening, how long can developments be held up for?
Oh, gosh, Charles, well, you would know this. I mean, it can literally be years. It can literally be years. If you get stuck with parcels of land that don't have the key infrastructure, where the zoning is slow, either because council hasn't done the strategic planning or because there are delays in that actual rezoning process, it can be 5 to 7 years to bring an average development to market, and it can be 10. And I'm sure you've heard, Charles, horror stories where it's...
Well, look, I've been involved in a couple and still am, and I just wonder sometimes because without going into detail about which councils there are, but I've gone to lodge a Section 96, so I've got the DA approved. I just want an alteration to it. I want to make sure that I relocate some of the dwellings I'm going to build, and it's been 2 years now. I've gone through absolute nightmare. They go through water, through eco, through fire. Then those reports can expire over a period of time, then you've got to go again. And yep. I finally rang the town planner and I said, look, this has been going some time. And you know what, Jane, they have no consideration for holding charges that you might be incurring as a developer. They can send people broke. And the chap said to me, I'm really busy at the moment. I'll get to it when I can.
Yeah, Charles, look, I think that the holding costs that you just mentioned are another hidden problem here. As you would know, you might get your development approved, as you said, but because you can't actually take it forward, you can't start turning the earth or building the apartments or whatever it might be, while you're holding that land, you're often being hit, well, most of the time being hit for land tax and for other fees and charges along the way. So it can be, even at those last two stages of the process between the development approval and the final completion, as you say, projects fall over, people go broke. And what that means at the end of the day is that the very much needed supply of properties isn't coming onto the market. And we know that that's worsening affordability, especially in Sydney.
Jane, why hasn't there been a sense of urgency around this? The house prices have been trending upwards in Sydney for years, for well over a decade. We know that there hasn't been sufficient supply on the market to meet for demand. Why haven't they been cracking the whip at government level to try and address this? Why is it taking so long?
Look, you know, you're dead right, and I wish I could. You can only ever put your finger on these things with hindsight, right? There was a point where we all stopped talking about, oh, isn't it great that our house prices are going up? And we all started talking about, oh my God, our kids aren't going to be able to afford to buy a home. And that point happened sometime, I think, in the last couple of years. So there was a shift out there, I think, in the marketplace. To the Premier's credit, when she took the top job at the beginning of the year, she said, right, this is one of my top 3 priorities. And we've worked closely throughout the course of this year with the new Planning Minister, Anthony Roberts, and indeed with some excellent people at the Department of Planning to try and work out where the blockages are in the system and to try and, offer positive solutions so that we can be part of the solution and not just pointing at the problem. But I think, like all really hard problems, what this needs is a sustained effort and focus kept on it. And statistics like today's that we've released need to be brought into the open because, if we don't know how big the problem is, then we can't work on how we best solve it. So we've given those statistics to the department, we've given them to the minister, and in fact we've given them to the parliament because we think that knowing the size of the problem means that we can start addressing it. And as I said, we very much want to be part of the solution. Like you, Charles, we know that, some councils are much slower than others. We know that some parts of the law are just adding red tape. They're not, helping either the people who already live in a suburb or people trying to develop in a suburb. But, these are hard problems to solve and you're right, they need to be addressed.
And there's the green tape as well. I often joke to people about Barangaroo. Some of the big buildings in Barangaroo have gone up in the same amount of time it took me to get a layback on my house from the road to my property. The council forced me to lodge a development application. I had to get a draftsman, an architect, to draw a square slab going into my property. And I have to go by the rules for absolutely 100%, but that's just pushing it to the extreme. And it took forever and a day. And I watched Barangaroo go up at the same time I got a concrete slab driveway.
Which is, multiple stories. It's huge. Jane Fitzgerald is with the Property Council of Australia. So what can you say about other states? How can we compare and contrast what's happening in New South Wales with Queensland and Victoria?
Oh, gosh. Sadly, we don't fare well. We did a piece of research. It's a couple of years ago now, but I'm pretty confident that we haven't sort of turned the tables, as it were, where the Property Council looked at planning systems right across the country. And unfortunately, New South Wales came dead last. It's really interesting when you look at a comparison in house prices between Sydney and Melbourne. When you look at that comparison in house prices, you find that Melbourne is much faster at bringing properties to the market. And our thinking on this is, and indeed it's backed up when you look at some of the data that comes out of some of the data houses, is that a lot of that has got to do with the fact that in Melbourne they're able to deliver homes more quickly. I think one of the best examples I know of the differences is, you look at a show like The Block. They moved to Melbourne because Sydney was too slow. They couldn't get one of their developments done in the time that it takes, the time they want to take to put a program to bear.
I'd never thought about that. What a fascinating insight.
And I think that's also a fantastic comparison too, Jane, in that if you look at the South Australian market or you look at the market in Canberra, they have all of these the subdivisions and land releases very, very well planned, well ahead of time. And I think that has helped stabilise prices, whereas Sydney has gone absolutely crazy.
And I think that's right. I think one of the things that we haven't done as well as other states is what's known as sequencing. We don't get things done in the right order, and it's that little bit of time that gets added at each step of the development process that slows things down. One of the other things we haven't done enough of, which they do very successfully in other states, is code assessment. So what that means is that, a council area gets to decide what the rules are in relation to development in their council area. And they can say, you can only go to 6 stories and you can only have this amount of units on a particular block and all of those sorts of things. In other states, if you comply with those rules, then the development process is very much quicker. We haven't embraced that here, and that's something that we want to, keep talking to the government about, because I think that it's good for the community just as it's good as, it's good for getting houses built more quickly, because what it means is the community gets a greater level of certainty about what types of development council says are going to be okay in their local area.
Jane, fascinating insight. Thanks for your time tonight. Jane Fitzgerald is the New South Wales Executive Director of the Property Council of Australia. Thank you.
How about that? It is quite fascinating as well. When you think about council approvals, if you're a developer in a city like Sydney and you've built something in the northwest and then you want to go and do a new development in the southwest, you're dealing with different councils with different set of rules compared to a city like Brisbane where they've got a grand total of one council.
Yeah, good point.
How much faster you'd be to share the experience and to replicate the model in other parts. It's very interesting stuff.
I'm holding back on any development application for a year in hope that anybody listening tonight from the council I live in will have forgotten what I said about that concrete slab.
It's square, I think you said. It's
Yeah.
square.
Sure.
13 12 83, and Wayne has dialed in from New South Wales. G'day. How can we help you, Wayne?
Hi, Charles. How you going?
Oh, good, thank you, Wayne.
Good. I just want a bit of advice. Nothing guaranteed, I understand. But, listen, my daughter's getting married in March next year. And when she gets married, I'm lending some money so they'll be able to buy a place around, probably somewhere from Roselands to Panania,
Right.
with a duplication of the M5 opening in 2019 and coming into winter. Do you think that's a good time to actually look at that area?
I think the area is changing a lot. It's a great area, by the way. It used to be one of those areas that nobody talked about. You go down Revesby, Panania, and Picnic Point, and it was just a long way away. It's amazing now the price of property. One of the things I would say to you is it really, we were talking about earlier on to Jane, it's about the supply issue, and the supply issue is changing. We've had an increase in stock every week for the last 6 to 8 weeks now. Last week it climbed, again another 2.53% over this time last week. So I'd say to you that as we're coming into a changing market with more stock, that's when you're going to have a better opportunity to buy. So I'd be keeping a close eye on the movement of stock in that area. The more for sale signs you see, Wayne, the more chance you have of getting a better opportunity.
So, like I'm saying, she's talking about March, so it's coming into winter. Normally it's a little bit quieter.
It is a bit quieter. We really haven't had a seasonal marketplace in real estate for the last 5-6 years. It's been all just gung-ho. We're slowly coming into the first real estate cycle I've seen in a long time from a seasonal point of view. But again, I would watch very, very closely. It's really the number of for sale signs, Wayne, that indicate to you as a buyer when you're going to get the best opportunity to negotiate.
Thanks for your call, Wayne. 13 12 83. Charles Tarbey's here tonight taking your calls on Property Fast Track. We'll go around the grounds in a moment, and shortly Tom Panos, auctioneer extraordinaire, joins us. Charles Tarbey's here tonight taking your calls on 13 12 83 Property Fast Track. There are some great advantages in being the world's largest real estate company. For a start, your Century 21 local office uses the best technology and knowledge base in the world. Combined with the fact that each office is independently owned and operated, your local Century 21 agent knows your city, your suburb, your town and your street. It also means Century 21 agents can offer a huge range of resources and experience, including information from over 300 offices around the country. It's no surprise Century 21 is the fastest growing real estate brand in Australia. Buying, selling or looking for a new home to rent? Contact your local Century 21 office and find out why they really are smarter, bolder and faster. That's why we let you in here, Charles.
Thank you.
Visit century21.com.au.
Let's go around the grounds where we take a real estate snapshot thanks to Century 21's national network of real estate agents. Tonight we're joined by David Martignago from Century 21 in Riverstone. G'day, David.
G'day, guys. How are you?
Going well, mate. Now tell us a bit about Riverstone. How far are you from the CBD?
On the train, we're about an hour, so about probably a 45-minute drive.
Yep.
In the northwest, heading out past Kellyville, Rouse Hill, and just before Windsor.
It's a great area, David, isn't it? It's taken off. You go back all those days to the Riverstone Meatworks, and it was one of those areas that people hardly went to, a little local shopping area, not much to it, cross over the railway line at the back of Cranebrook, and you're there. And now, of course, all of that area right across to Rouse Hill and all the way down to the M5 has just absolutely taken off. M7, I'm sorry.
It has, yeah. I think it's put us on the map, Charles, and it's... I think coming along from Rouse Hill with the new the railway station there at Rouse Hill, it's sort of flowing into our area of Schofields, Riverstone and Box Hill, part of that northwest, where probably the last... There was so many farms for so many years where there was, only about 2,000 homes, and that's all we had in Riverstone for years, and then suddenly now all those farms are all turning into housing lots, and now we've got thousands and thousands of homes, and we've got more on the plans now with new shopping centres coming forward in Riverstone and Schofield, so it's starting to change, massive change in the dynamic.
All of that area, I learnt to fly actually out at Schofields. Luckily for people who live in Sydney, I stopped. But it's massive out there in Parklea Markets. It was a long way to go in the old days, but of course now all the freeways are connecting through that area. You're really not that far away at all. And the great part about it is it's got its own infrastructure. And that rail link that's going through, as you said, is brilliant. David and his team run a very successful office at top performers for many, many years. So I know they've got that area well sewn up. And you're about to open in another area too in time to come, not too far away. But tell us, why did you pick that area yourself to start real estate in?
Being a local, I've grown up in the Riverstone area, so it was a fairly good fit for me. And back in the day when I started, Charles, in '97, you could buy a house, for $135,000 back then, a 3-bedroom brick house on a 700 square metre block.
Wow.
And it was tough going. You know what it was like back then. They'd sit on the market for numerous days. And
that's right. Yep.
Very, very hard to turn them over. And then we've gone through a few changes since then, and now it's a bit of a different market out here, and I can see now the growth with, like you said, the railway line. When you think about it, 55 minutes to Central Railway Station, it's not that far.
Not at all. And a block of land that would sell for $700,000-800,000 now in some areas.
Wow.
Exactly. Those same blocks of dirt were $89,950.
Yep.
10,000 under 10K.
Under 100K.
Under 100. Sorry.
Yes.
Wow.
89,950. Yeah. The same block today, you'd be paying $650 for it.
David, I'm imagining with land as a somewhat of a luxury out there that we're dealing almost exclusively in homes, or are there units being built as well?
In Riverstone at the moment, it's still homes. You're finding Schofield, there's a massive influx of 5-storey units. The council's allowing the R3 zoning for 5-storey blocks, which we're seeing. We haven't seen that coming to Riverstone yet, but it is just starting in Schofield, and we're selling a massive amount of those off the plan because the mums and dads can't afford the $750,000 for your average 3-bedroom home, so they can spend $500 to $600 and they'll grab a unit.
Well, I like your area. I like where it's located. I think there's a lot more potential there. They've got a lot more land still coming up behind you, David. I really appreciate you coming on and telling us a little bit about the Riverstone area.
Thanks for your time, mate. David Martignago from Century 21 in Riverstone, New South Wales. He spoke about apartments. Now, here's some fun facts for you, gentlemen. This came out today. Apartment and other unit prices have grown more than house prices over the past 20 years in almost half of Australia's capital cities. A News Corp Australia analysis has found unit prices in Perth, Hobart and Darwin are rising higher than houses in Melbourne. They're almost identical.
There is a very, very important reason for it happening, Nick. They changed them from units to apartments. So they changed the name from units to apartments.
Yeah.
Because it really is. It's very funny. People buy a unit or they buy an apartment. And, of course, lifestyles have changed. People want to move back in the city. They want to move where the action is. There are restaurants.
I bought something in the 1980s called a flat.
Oh, there you go. So it started as a flat, did it? So flat unit apartment, something like that. So
and I can't afford any of them. It doesn't matter the nomenclature. So there's the rule on that. Let's chat auctions once more with Tom Panos. Tom is an auctioneer and a veteran of the business, 20-something years. He joins us every week on Property Fast Track. G'day, Tom.
Hello, gentlemen. Good to be talking to you all.
Always a pleasure, mate. Tom, let's start out Sydney. Stay and have a look at what's happening with clearance rates there. They've bounced back to over 65%. What's that indicate?
That indicates that the kind of property that went on the market, Nick, was attractive to the buyers. That indicates potential that vendors are starting to accept the reality of the market, that they're listening to the media, that they're listening to their agent, that they're listening to shows like this, and they're beginning to realise that you can still sell your property, but you're not going to be winning the lotto. So I think it's a little bit of that.
They had 1,217 auctions in Sydney compared to 309 in Melbourne due to the Melbourne Cup and the spring racing. But, that's still a great result, isn't it, Tom? In the high 60s, that is a great result.
That is a very good result. That's basically saying that, only 3 of the properties that went to auction did not get sold in Sydney. And in Melbourne, it's basically saying only 2 of the properties that went to auction, not that a lot went. I can't get over these real estate agents in Melbourne. I have to tell you, they have got good working conditions. They don't work AFL. They don't work Melbourne Cup. That's the place to be an agent.
What about the Grand Prix? Is that the same as well?
Yeah, Grand Prix. Is that Gold Coast or is that...
No.
Melbourne.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but they work hard when they're working, Tom. They work hard when they're working.
When they're working.
That's the disclaimer.
It rains a lot.
It also feels quite handy when houses almost sell themselves in many ways. Now, I know Melbourne's one of those markets that's just been going from strength to strength. Is it true that when markets are hot like that, is it easy to become complacent as an auctioneer or as a vendor?
It is, Sam, because there's a saying, nothing breeds failure like success. When you're successful, what actually happens is you can get away with cutting a few short corners, and sometimes it creeps in and that becomes your norm. But when the market gets hard and you don't have another buyer waiting behind the buyer you're negotiating with, you start to get pretty desperate to say, listen, we want to do a deal. And you're 100% right. Like if you're in Melbourne, like if you can't put a deal together with one buyer, it's not the end of the world because you've got another one waiting. But in other parts of Australia, Sam, that's changing a little bit. So what you've got to do is take out your A game to every buyer.
I think you've both mentioned, Charles and Tom, that the agents are working harder now. We went to an auction over the weekend just to sort of kick the tyres and get informed. But my wife got a phone call from the estate agent at about 10 to 6 on a Saturday night. I went, there's a guy's working hard, taking it seriously. He could. They sold the place. He could have gone home and popped a cork with his wife and celebrated, but no, he kept going and made some more phone calls.
Look, the good agents, as Tom will tell you, they work incredibly hard. It's as we've said this before. You're at people's houses of a night time when you should be with your own family. There's a lot that happens weekends. People can't see you through the week a lot of the time, so a lot of your work is done when you should be with your own family, and it's a difficult process from there. I'm not sure what the divorce rate is, Tom, but I believe it could be pretty high, my boy. 77.3% was the clearance rate for Melbourne, by the way.
Yeah, wow. Okay. And what about Brisbane?
Brisbane, we had a clearance rate of 53.5%, and they had 169 auctions. And, I've got to tell you, last year that rate was lower. They were at 50%. So that was a clearance rate there. And Adelaide was 65%. Canberra was 68%. Tasmania was the star of the show.
Yeah, but come on, Tom. It had 100% clearance rate, but tell the guys why.
There was only 2 auctions.
They both sold. Fantastic.
It's a magnificent state, showing how to get it done.
But were they both under the hammer?
Yes,
Yes, they were both under the hammer.
Yeah.
Which, yes, you are correct. As they say, when the sample size is 1, the stats don't matter. But I've got to say that overall, a weighted average of just under 70%, not bad for real estate in Australia this time of the year.
Tom Panos, always great to get your insights into property fast track and what's happening out there in the burbs. We'll talk to you next week. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
See
Tom.
you, Tom. And Charles Tarbey, thank you for your time,
Nick.
sir.
Thanks, Sam.
We'll see you again, Charles.
Thanks, John.
All the best.